Hi, I'm Darrin Peppard. Welcome to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, the podcast dedicated to today's hardworking leader. Join me every Sunday for leadership insight, inspiration, and a little pep talk to keep you rolling down your road to awesome. All right, everybody, welcome into the Leaning into Leadership podcast. I am Darrin Peppard, and I'll tell you what, this week on the show, we really want to focus on the aspiring leader. You know, the person who's ready to take the leap. Now, I remember when I took that first leap, when I left the classroom and became an assistant principal. It was a pretty nerve-wracking time. I did not know what to expect. I hadn't had an interview in years, so everything to do with getting prepared for that process really took a lot of time. Well, our guest today, Rob Breyer, has the answers for you. Rob wrote the book, Taking the Leap, a field guide for aspiring school leaders. And it is not just a do this and a do that book, but really gives you some great, deep background from actual leadership practitioners who have gone through that process. It is a phenomenal tool. Rob is a phenomenal individual. I'm excited for you to have an opportunity to listen to what Rob Breyer has to say today. Hey, before we get there, leaders, let me ask you a question. Have you sat in a professional development opportunity and wondered, how is this supposed to make me a better leader? How does this help my team to be a more efficient team? Yeah, I've been there. And it's painful. You know, sometimes professional development for leaders needs to be about being a better leader. Right now, we're going through an incredible turnover with leaders all across the country. And our leadership teams are going to have a very different makeup as we go into next school year. Well, what if you could take a step in the summer to get your leadership team ready to go? I mean, ready to come out of the gates. Everybody on the same page, everybody with the same core values, with the same goals, with the same plan. That's high-performance leadership teams from Road to Awesome. I've created this 2-day intensive workshop, which is fully customized for each leadership team that I'm working with to help you put your team in a position where they can be the absolute most successful possible. When our leadership teams are performing at a high level, that trickles down. That means our teachers, all of our staff are performing at a high level. And ultimately, that means that our kids are performing at a high level. But folks, it all begins with leadership. It's one of the most important investments you can make, getting your leadership team all on the same page. So let's connect. Reach out to me. Email me at darrinmpeppard@roadtoawesome.net. That's Darrin M. Peppard at roadtoawesome.net. Let's have a conversation about what we can do together to get your leadership team performing at a high level, get your school on the road to awesome. Now, enjoy this interview with Rob Breyer. All right, Rob, thank you so much for joining me on the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Definitely excited about this conversation with you today. And I know you've got some great insight and so forth to share with the listeners.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here, Darrin. It's been a pleasure just getting to know you over the past couple of years. And I'm excited to be on the show and get a chance to talk to you about just some of the great things happening in education today.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for some transparency's sake, Rob and I have known each other for probably close to 2 years, getting to know each other first through the Teach Better Mastermind. Obviously, we worked together on your book, Taking the Leap, a field guide for aspiring school leaders. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But like so many, Rob is one of those people I've gotten to know really, really well through my camera. I've yet to spend any time with Rob in person, but eventually, man, that's going to happen.
We're going to make that happen in the very near future. I'm promising you. Like, we'll find a way. If I have to come to Nebraska, I'll make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess I just need to start doing some work in North Carolina, speaking at some conferences or working with some schools or something like that. So, all things with time, right?
Well, I'm
So,
working on that for you, so don't worry. We'll get you here sooner or later.
right on, man. I love that. Love that. I definitely would be excited about going and spending some time in North Carolina. Just, Rob and I were talking before about the weather, and it's the day we're recording this. It's I don't know, 11 degrees here in Omaha, and it's lightly snowing. And I think Robbie said it's what, 78 degrees right now.
78 with a little bit of mist, but we can live with that.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about a little bit of mist if I could have 78 degrees today. That is absolutely, absolutely true, man. So for my listeners that maybe don't know who you are, don't know a lot about you, know you as well as I do, maybe just share a little bit of kind of your background, maybe your origin story, if you will, that puts you in the chair you're sitting in today.
Wow. So my journey into leadership has been a long one of just lots of twists and turns and a lot of bumps in the road. It wasn't that nice, straight, easy path. Of course, I'm one of those people who takes that path of great resistance and learns along the journey. So um, I went to college and up in King's College in Pennsylvania, and I went to school for education, and I took a minor in computer science. And when I graduated, I was offered a job in the computer science field, and I went into that, and I did that for about 7 or 8 years. And it was focused just on building high-speed fiber optic networks and uh, mainframe support and doing stuff like that. And that market crashed. And I was like, gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to keep going through this and having to find new jobs every year. And I had a degree in elementary education, and I moved down south here to North Carolina from Pennsylvania. And I remember I wrote up resumes, got everything all put together, and I was going to go out and do some interviews. And I was just going to pop into schools and meet with the principals. And I went to get a haircut. And as I'm getting a haircut, the lady's like, "So, what are you doing down here? You said you're from Pennsylvania." And I said, "I'm looking to get a teaching job." And she looks at the other lady next to us, looks back at me and goes, "What do you want to teach?" I was like, "I'd love to teach third grade, third, fourth, or fifth. Like that would be my wheelhouse. I think I'd do really well there." She looks back at this other lady, and I'm like, "Why do they keep looking at each other?" I'm really confused at this point. And she's like, "Well, what schools are you going to interview at?" And I gave her the list of schools, and she looks back at this other lady, and the other lady goes, "I need to get your name and information. My daughter's the principal at the school over here." And
No
she's like,
way.
"She would
Oh,
love to
that's so
have you."
cool.
And she's like, "I know she has a position open." And so as I'm sitting in the chair getting my haircut, she goes and calls her daughter. And she says she wants to meet with you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I drive on over, sit and talk with her. And lo and behold, she didn't have a job, but her friend down at school right down the road had a fifth grade teaching position open. And it's February, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll take it. And I went and got into this classroom, and he warned me. He's like, "It is a tough class. They made the previous teacher. She left mid-year, and I got in there, and I just fell in love with teaching, and I was really into it. And I kind of just was working through. I taught fifth grade for 5 years, and I taught third grade for 2. And every principal I ever had was always like, "Rob, you need to go into school administration. Like, we need leaders who are going to advocate for teachers and really kind of be that support that they need." And I was always like, "Oh, I can't afford it right now. It's tough moving from, a technology salary to a teaching salary. I don't have the money to go to college." And I remember one day, Dr. Belvia Williams goes to me. She's like, "You have a meeting at central office tomorrow at 3:30 in the afternoon." Okay. I go over there and I walk in. There's like a room of like 25 people in this room. And as I'm sitting there listening, there's something that they had the Race to the Top grant. And through the Race to the Top grant, all the counties in the Sand Hills region, North Carolina, decided to put together a leadership cohort. And what it would do is it would take teachers and help them transition to become school principals. And basically, the idea was that you would be placed in a school with a principal, and you'd be a principal intern and shadow them for the whole school year. And every Wednesday, we'd have to go into a classroom, like a classroom environment, and that's where we would get all the courses that we needed to become school principals. It was an amazing experience. I didn't think I would get selected because they were only selecting a few from each area, and I was one of the 3 that was selected from my area. I went, interviewed, and they were going to narrow it down. There was probably 72 people in the room, and they were going to narrow it down to 20. Lo and behold, I got a phone call saying you've been accepted to this program, and I went there. And from there, I went and I was a high school assistant principal for a year. I was an elementary school assistant principal for 4 years, and then I became an elementary school principal now for the past 6. And right now, that's my current position. It's what I've been doing, and that is really where my passion is. I love elementary school. I love to really kind of get in there, and I just loved watch that light bulb moment with those kids and see them as they're getting these concepts that, like watching them struggle for that little bit of time. And then when you see them get it and how excited they are about getting it, and they still have that passion and that love for learning at this moment. And so for me, that drives me. That's what pushes me every day and makes me want to do this job.
It's a pretty great origin story. Quick sidebar on that one. What a really innovative and forward-thinking decision by the group to use that race to the top money to grow your own with educational leaders. We'll talk a little bit more about that that looming shortage in not just in the classroom, but in the leadership roles right now in education. But definitely a really unique origin story. Actually, this week's blog post that I'm releasing is titled "Origin Story," and we all have this very unique way in which we ended up, with a calling in education. It was one thing for you to say, hey, this opportunity with fiber optic networks, hey, that's an opportunity. But, clearly when your future comes down to because you got a haircut, clearly this was a calling for you.
And it just set the path. And like people talk to me all the time and they're like, Rob, you had to make a lot more money in that industry. And I was like, I did. I made a very good salary. At 25 years old, I was making more than I am now at 46. And I've been in this industry now for this is my 16th year. And it's really amusing to me, but it's not about the money. Like when people talk about like, we're here for the passion of what we do and to make that difference. For me, it's true. When I hear other people in this industry concerned about the conditions or what we're having to deal with as educators, I remind them that it's a whole lot different out there in the business world. Like when you go home here, your kids go home. Yeah, you're doing work at night, but your phone's not ringing all night long. You're not answering phone calls in foreign countries at 2-3 o'clock in the morning because that's when they're working. And there's a lot of benefits to what we do. Yeah, we work 7 days a week and we're 24 hours because that's what we do, but we do as a service. It's not what's expected of us. We do it because this is what we do for children. In business, it's completely different. You have to be available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and you have to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So there is a difference. But here you get to see the difference you're making in the world. In the business end, you're just a part and you're sending a product out and you're putting it out into the world that makes a difference, but you don't really get to experience it. When you're an educator, you got that hands-on opportunity to really work with somebody to help shape them and really help to build that love of learning. And you get to see it, and you get to see the fruit of your labor every single day that you're inside of a school. And that's what's important.
Yeah, I think that's something that gets overlooked. I was speaking at a school in Wyoming earlier this week, and one of the things that I talked about with them is kind of how education is like Chinese bamboo. With Chinese bamboo, it's 4 full years before you see anything from that plant. And then, boom, in 6 weeks, the thing grows 80 feet in height. It's a lot like what we do in education. You put in all of this work and all of this work and all of this work. You're pouring into this little human being that you want to help be a better, bigger human being by the end of the school year, into their time in your school, whatever the case may be. And we sometimes forget about that it does take some time. So let me ask you this. This is to kind of put you on the spot. We didn't talk about this one in advance, but thinking about the, you put in the fruits of your labors, and then down the road, maybe there's, one of those bamboo kind of stories. Is there one maybe that jumps into your head of, a kid that you poured a lot into, and you didn't see the thank you or the payoff somewhere until quite a ways down the road. Is there a story like that you have?
Oh, absolutely. Um, and I can see that this young man like perfectly. And like, I didn't like high school when I was there because, like I felt like in that role, I spent so much time dealing with discipline and really not being able to build the type of relationship with kids I really wanted to build. And high school's different. They come in, they already have their own personalities and they have their mindsets already going. And you don't see, like you said, that fruit of your labor for quite some time. And I remember this young man, and I was working with him. He was a sophomore in high school. And I remember, like, nice kid, talked to me every day. And when he saw me out in the courtyard, would always come up and talk to me at lunch and stuff. Got into some fights. He got caught for doing some things they shouldn't have been doing. And I remember this one time he got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to. And I remember going to court for him. And I was sitting in court. His own parents didn't show up to court. And, like, it was tough. And I sat there and I said, like, listen, I know this young man. He's a good young man. He's trying his hardest. He's working. And I had to kind of just testify on his behalf. And that was it. Like, I left that moment. I left the court, went back on my normal life, finished out that year. It was 4 years later, because at this point, I spent my first day as a principal in our district, and we were at a summer retreat for our school leadership. And we go to this big hotel, and it's actually, it's a restaurant, but it's also attached to a retirement community here in Pinehurst, North Carolina. And I'm walking through, and next thing you know, I see this young man come running out of the kitchen and just runs over and gives me a big hug. And he's like, "Mr. Breyer," he's like, "I can't believe it's you. Like, what are you doing here?" And he's like, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Man, after I got done high school," he's like, "I took your advice. I took the cooking classes and I got into community college and I went and got my degree. Like, I got an associate's degree in learning how to be a cook, a chef." I was like, "Wait, you
That's
got your
awesome.
culinary degree?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he was telling me, he actually remembered, he's like, "You were the only person who showed up for me at court." He's like, "When everybody else was giving up on me," he's like, "You were still there. You still had my back at that moment." And he's like, "No matter the stuff that I did," he's like, "You were always there." He's like, "Even when you would come back and I'd see you around the campus, like at the high school," he's like, "You always took time to talk to me. You always checked on me to see how I was doing." He's like, "That meant more than you'll ever know." And that's when it hits you, like, that's when I realized, like, high school, you don't get that same instant gratification like you do in an elementary. But man, when you see these kids out in public and you see these kids as they become young men and they become just different people, it's just so neat to have those conversations and see. And you don't realize the impact you had on them until you get to that moment. And it's really an amazing feeling. And yeah, it gets me every time I talk about it. So
That's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that one. This is, I know I'm kind of squirreling off of topic, and we will come back, I promise. But um, these are the stories that educators need to be telling right now.
yeah,
There's so many things that are, being thrown at education by people who aren't educators. I mean, I would imagine at least once this year, Rob, you've had somebody who told you how to do your job, but certainly they don't want to do your job,
yeah,
and that's true, I think, for every educator right now. Everybody
absolutely.
knows how to do your job. They're going to tell you how you should be doing your job, but they certainly don't want to do your job. And the truth is they don't know how to do your job. But when those are the stories that are being shared, and you put a student, a child, as the centerpiece of that story, how can you not say educators are making a difference? How can you
Oh,
not
absolutely.
say educators are worth their weight in gold when, you know, when you tell stories like that? So just, it was a total chase of a squirrel, but absolutely worth going off
Absolutely.
script. I told you
I
we
can't
weren't going to
agree.
be on script anyway. So yeah. So let's talk a little bit more in the leadership space specifically. And I'm sure it's happening in North Carolina. I know it's happening in Omaha, in Colorado, where I used to be, in Wyoming, where I used to be, where there's a lot of turnover in the leadership ranks. Whether
Yeah.
that's superintendents, principals, whatever, that are they're saying, hey, this looks like a good time to retire, or districts are offering really large incentives to have people retire because, they're going to have some budget shortfalls, whatever the case may be. We are seeing this big gap in leadership. Is that what you're seeing when you're speaking with folks in, not just in North Carolina, you talk with people all over the country?
It is. It's amazing to hear. One of the first people I started coaching was a young lady up in New York, and she was a teacher and wanted to become a school assistant principal. And we worked for some time and just doing some coaching. And lo and behold, she ended up becoming a high school assistant principal and has been doing it for the past couple of years. And I recently had the privilege of having a conversation with her and just to kind of check up on and see where she was at. And she's now moving into the principal, looking to move into the principal role, getting in. But she was talking to me about how there's just been so much change in her district up in New York, and she's seeing superintendents retiring. And so there's just so many shifts where people are retiring and people are moving up, and it's opening up more and creating more opportunities. And so, like, talking to people in Arizona, talking to people in Texas and Virginia, you're hearing about all these people who are finding opportunities to leave what we're doing and taking that early retirement, or maybe they're finding other opportunities, but it's opening up and it's allowing others to shift and move up in this profession. And if you're a teacher right now who's been considering getting into leadership, now is the time, because there are jobs opening up, because as those principal positions open, those assistant principals, they're ready. They've been training for this for so long. They're moving up in that principal position, which is going to open up a lot of AP positions in the future. And if you really want to get into school leadership, now is the time to take that step, take that leap into this, and really start looking at, how do I get into one of these positions?
And so, obviously, this is an area that is definitely a strength of yours. You mentioned coaching somebody who is an aspiring leader in New York. I know you've done this with people all over the place. And if you're looking for someone to coach you through this process, Rob is your guy. I'll have his contact information in the show notes. But he's not just the expert in terms of he coaches you. Rob literally wrote the book on how you take the leap from classroom teacher to AP or principal, or AP up to principal, or whatever the case may be, making that leap. So taking the leap, a field guide for aspiring school leaders. Rob, talk a little bit about that, and how does someone utilize that book to best prepare them?
So really, like, what that book came from, to me, was more like a virtual coaching opportunity. Like, I wanted to kind of walk you through what we were doing in the coaching world to help people who were looking to transition from teachers into school administrators. And for me, it's really understanding what leadership is and what your leadership style looks like. What kind of leader do you want to be? And then it's understanding, how do I get the skills? Because it's the thing you hear from, people who are looking to get into school leadership, is they go in, they want somebody with experience. They want somebody who's been doing these different things. How do I get experience when I'm a classroom teacher? And so in the book, you're going to find just strategies and ideas, and honestly, people to talk to and the questions to ask about, how do I get these experiences? What do I need to know about these different things? For example, what is a school administrator's role in an EC, or we call it exceptional children here in North Carolina? But when you're in an IEP meeting, what is their role? What is the expectations of an AP versus a principal? And knowing who to talk to and who to ask those questions to. And then it's really about preparing for an interview. In the book, you're going to find sample questions. You're going to find ideas to really think about, how do I want to answer these type of questions? And then within the book, you're going to find all kinds of school leaders who give you their insights and their strategies and the things that they do to prepare for interviews. The book has so much value. If you are looking to take that leap into school administration, it's going to walk you through getting to know yourself as a school leader, to understanding what are the steps to go and prepare yourself as a school leader, and then really taking that step to get that knowledge of what's an interview going to be like, and what do I need to do so I can go in there and nail that interview so I can become a school leader.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that there are tips in there from actual school leaders, and it's not just some school leaders. It's like a who's who of school
Oh,
leaders. There's some
absolutely.
incredible individuals who wrote small vignettes for taking the leap. It's truly a powerful book, and I think it's something that everyone, even if you're not like pursuing that first position, even if let's say, myself, so I've been an AP, I've been a principal, I've been a superintendent. If I wanted to apply for a high school principal position, for next year, honestly, folks, I would go right to that book, because some of the things Rob didn't touch on was like, how do you go through and analyze and plan around the data that you can find from that school? I mean, let's be honest. If you go in and you interview for an AP or a principal job and they don't ask you about data, you might wonder if you even want to work there, because not the data is everything, right, Rob? But
Absolutely.
they're going to ask you about data. They're going to ask you about how you are going to perform as an instructional leader. So I think that's one of those pieces in this book that, as somebody who's not super strong on the data side, to me, that was one of the more powerful takeaways.
One of the best compliments I got was from a veteran school leader who said that they got so into the book and they found themselves doing just the different exercises and activities within the book and really reflecting on their own leadership style. Not that they were planning on interviewing, but really taking a step back and looking at, what is my leadership style? What do I believe in? What do I value? And is the work I'm currently doing aligning to what I value? And how do I go back and really kind of refocus on some of the things that I wanted to do from the beginning, that maybe I got so wrapped up in all
Yeah.
the other things of being a school administrator that I kind of need to get back to. And that was a really great compliment to hear, because I mean, this is a really esteemed colleague who I really have a lot of admiration for. And to hear that he's doing this with the book really meant a lot. But then I've gotten so much feedback from just different people out there who are like, hey, I just want to say thank you for writing this book. This book has really been a big help. Your strategies and ideas have really helped me as I prepare for school leadership roles. And to be honest with you, I have found myself going back and using the book and going through the activities and reflecting on it, because we, as a school leader, you're always looking to get better. You're always looking to improve on your skills, because the better we get, the better our teachers get, which means the better our students do. And that's the most important thing. And this book, it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, there's something in this book that can help everybody.
Absolutely, folks. It's a fantastic book, and we'll put links in the show notes, so you can go and get that. You can get it on our website, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it on Rob's website. I know on Rob's website you can get the autographed copy,
Yes.
which is worth its weight in gold to have Rob's autograph on it. It really is. So we'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so you can go and grab a copy, because let's be honest. I mean, it's when you and I are doing this interview, it's late February. This will probably air in early March. It's go time right now.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, now is the time when, if you are looking to take the leap, or you're looking to leap to the next leadership role, those jobs are opening up, right? I mean, it's time to start thinking about that.
It is. And, you got districts right now who are offering incentives for teachers who are looking to move. They're offering sign-on bonuses for school administrators. Now is the time. I mean, if you were looking to really get into this profession as a school administrator, now's the time to do it. Take the chance, take that leap, get out there and just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I gotta ask you this. And so we want people to get out there, take the leap, get after it, go and grab that next position, or that first school leadership position. When you get into that school leadership position, I'll tell you what, if I could give myself one piece of advice, looking back, I could probably give myself a dozen, but from the perspective I currently sit in, I would say, man, get a journal, because there are so many stories, so many things that occur. As a school leader. You were sharing one. I won't ask you to share it on the air, but you were sharing just from today alone. And, thinking back on, the 15, 16 years that I was a school and district level leader, every day there was something. and something that makes a great story, or that you just sit back and you laugh. So give me one from your time as a school leader that people are going to say, you got to be kidding me, or that maybe just touches the heart, wherever you want to go with it.
Wow, that's a great question. So, you know, the piece of advice that I would give myself as a school leader coming in is you got to get over yourself and realize that people aren't always going to agree with you, or they are not always going to like everything
Amen.
you say.
Yeah,
And that is the
it's good advice.
hardest thing, because I remember coming in and like, I can't walk into a school where, I was told like the morale was low, the culture needed rebuilding. And that's something that I feel that is a strength of mine. But when you come into that situation, like, you're always trying to make people happy. You're trying to give them what they need and what they want, because you want them to love being at that school. But that's not the answer. You got to be okay with people not agreeing with you. You got to be okay with people being sometimes mad at the decisions that you're making. But if you share with them the why behind the decision and how it's going to impact our school positively, people tend to, yeah, they might still go away grumbling, but people are going to understand that, hey, we're doing what's best for kids, and the intention is there to help you. It's amazing how quickly they come back around. But you can't be afraid of making people angry. And that was a tough lesson to learn.
Yeah. It makes me think of a quote that I read. I think I saw this today, actually. Somebody had shared a quote, and it was something along the lines of, pacifying people is still lying to them.
Oh, I like that, because that's true.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
And
You got to be
sometimes you got to be
straight.
prepared. You got to be prepared to have that
Yeah.
tough conversation at times. And those, one of the best things you can do in those situations is prepare yourself. Like, I am that person. I sit down and I have a fake conversation on a piece of paper and in my head about what I think that conversation is going to be like. Because when I get into it, I don't want to get caught up in weeds and stuff like that. I want to go in with a plan. Here's what we're going to be talking about. And I lead that conversation down the path. And I find that it ends up better like that. So that would be my piece of advice. But, that feel good story, and I have a lot of them, and especially in elementary school, because so many crazy things happen in elementary school. But probably my favorite is this year they did Twin Day. The kids were supposed to dress like somebody they wanted to be their twin. And as I walked around this school and saw so many little Mr. Bryers walking around the school, it was the cool. Kids are wearing bow ties and ties, and they got their suit jackets on, and it was one of the, and they all had the little beard painted on their face and stuff. It was one of the coolest things, because, their teachers are who you would expect them to come in as, because that's their class. They spend the most time with those people. But to see that the things that I've done here to build a rapport with our students and to build those relationships with our students, and to see them coming and dressed up as me, it is a pretty cool thing. And it's really an honor, because it tells me that the work I'm doing is having an impact, and that I'm not just the guy here running the school. I'm a part of their life, and I'm that person that they know that they can rely on and put trust in. And I just think that's a really cool thing. And the more you're in classrooms, the more you're around the kids, the more you take time to invest in your students, the better that relationship's going to be. So that's my feel-good story.
I love it. I love it. I mean, the bottom line is, and I think you hit it really well right there. Leadership is about relationships.
Always.
And if you're not willing to invest in the relationships and continue to invest in the relationships, you can't be a leader if you don't have people following you, right? And they only follow you with a relationship. So
absolutely.
All right, so here we go. The money question. Everybody
boy.
on Leaning Into Leadership podcast get hit with the exact same question. So, Rob, how are you leaning into leadership right now?
Wow. So my strategy for leaning into leadership right now is, I can't lie. If you would ask me this 6 months ago, it would have been, I am surviving. I'm doing everything I can to keep my head above water. But, things are starting to relax, and I'm starting to find that groove again. Leading during a crisis is like one of the hardest things, and which is like one of my favorite quotes. But it is, in a moment of crisis, reactions set the leaders apart from the followers. And I think that's true. It's how we react to things, and it sets the tone for your school. And I won't lie, even after 6 years of doing this job, like I still struggled. COVID was new for all of us. It offered so many new challenges, but we learned and we navigated and we learned how to get through the situation. And so now I'm leading back into my own leadership, and I'm really kind of investing in my own leadership. And I'm reading constantly, and I'm reading a lot of books on leadership. And the one I'm reading right now is Leadership and Self-Deception: Getting Out of the Box by the Abinger Institute.
Yeah,
And it is blowing my mind. It is a really good book. And so, and I think that's sometimes we get so stuck in reading books in our field, reading the school leadership books and all that. But there's so many great leadership books that are talking about industry, and then taking those concepts and putting them back into the work that we're doing, having those conversations, and understanding that sometimes when we think we're thinking outside the box, we're really stuck inside a different box that we just don't realize. And how do we work our way out of that if we want to continue to grow and keep getting better? So this is a great book. I highly recommend everybody check this one out. It is blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that one up. One of my former assistant principals shared a copy of that book with me a number of years ago. And I'm like at a loss for words thinking about that book, because it really changes how you look at leadership in general, but then also at your own leadership. And I mean, just like you talked about, shifting the paradigm from I think I'm outside the box to actually I'm just in a different box. Just a fantastic read. So I appreciate you sharing that. It's
a great book. So, but I think it's important. You asked me, what am I doing to invest in myself as a leader? And that's how I'm building my leadership. Is you're constantly reading and constantly taking some time to invest in yourself. We always want to keep growing. And I think the worst thing we can do as a school leader is just be comfortable with where we're at. I think you got to continuously keep pushing yourself. One of my mentors always talks about, you got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you once you get comfortable and then things just become easy, you're not being effective anymore. You got to keep pushing forward, and you got to keep making those changes. And so that's my best advice. And that's something I keep in my heart every single day, is got to keep getting better.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome, man. Thanks so much. Again, man, I really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing just some incredible insight with folks on, oh man, everything from what you're reading to, ways to go out and pursue that next position, really making a difference. And of course, sharing some really great stories. I really appreciate that. So thank you again, Rob, for being on the Leading into Leadership podcast.
Hey, thank you so much, Darrin, and to everybody listening. Don't be afraid of that challenge. Get out there, take that next step, push yourself, and see what happens. You might find that you truly love being a school leader.
There you go. Time to take the leap.
Absolutely, get out there and do it.
I really hope you enjoyed listening to Rob Breyer. What a talented individual, and just somebody who really, really gets it. And I appreciate that Rob has his heart right in that place where he wants to help other aspiring administrators take that leap to the next level. So a big thank you to Rob for being a part of the Leading into Leadership podcast. All of his contact information, how to buy his book, everything you could need to know about Rob Breyer is down there in the show notes. So make sure that you take a look at those show notes and reach out and connect with Rob. If you are somebody who's considering taking the leap, or you are leaping from one position into another, check out his work. It is truly, truly impactful work. All right, and now it's time for a pep talk. Earlier this week, as I was wrapping up my workout, I had a conversation with one of the employees who works at the gym where I go and work out. And the conversation really was kind of focused around what we can do to continue to get ourselves moving forward when we are stuck. This young lady really felt stuck. She graduated from college, didn't really know where she wanted to go from there. So the degree she had, she could go get a job there, or she has this passion for music. Which direction do I go? And she was kind of suffering, honestly, from that whole analysis paralysis thing. She was overthinking everything. She told me during the conversation that she just wants to be able to make a difference in the world. And that day I was wearing my Positive Impact t-shirt, which actually is what started the conversation. And I told her, I said, here's the thing. Each and every one of us has the ability to change the world. But you don't change the world overnight. You change the world one conversation at a time. And I felt in that moment that the conversation that she and I were having was one of those conversations. She shared with me, hey, some of the struggles that I'm having. I really appreciate what you told me because I think that's going to help me get moving forward. And honestly, hey, as a motivational speaker, when I get to have one-on-one conversations with people and they give me that kind of feedback, and honestly, I just get to talk to somebody and see them move forward, folks, it inspires me and it reignites me. That's what's happening each and every day in our classrooms. When you are having conversations with students, whether you're a school leader, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a bus driver, it doesn't matter. When you're having those conversations, folks, you are leaving an impact on kids. You are changing the world one conversation at a time. That is what it's all about. All right, get out there, have a Road to Awesome week. I appreciate what each and every one of you do. Let's get this thing going, folks. You've got it. Have a Road to Awesome week. Thank you for listening to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, brought to you by Road to Awesome. Don't forget, click subscribe, give a review, and share this with somebody who might also enjoy leaning into leadership.